Hi, I'm the True Wise Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. Final Fantasy XIV. What can I even say about it? It's a game that hardly needs any introduction. The game has taken the world by storm and was considered so good they had to stop selling it for a while. Yeah, for an MMO. That is how popular it was, and still is. And the numbers are still insane to this day. It is even more amazing when you remember that when originally Final Fantasy XIV came out, it was bad, like, just straight up bad, and they had to apologize. Straight up apologize. I mean, it was just bad on a fundamental level, with very odd gameplay, running slowly because they won't optimize a fucking barrel. They seriously have a problem with optimization. I swear on my life, I don't know what's wrong with them. And the story being pretty dull. However, instead of just abandoning it, they decided to actually rework it to make it functional, and actually try to reboot/remake its soft more than anything else to tell a far grander story than we could have ever realized. And then the expansions. And what is this far grander tale, you may ask? I mean, like, you clicked on the video, so I mean, like, you already know who I'm talking about. In any case, today we are talking about HILDBRAND, Heliodor, Maximilian Manderville. This hero, this absolute himbo, is a character who I fell in love with instantly as I delve into his just insane story, full of joy, sadness, wackiness, and I cannot stress this enough, a lot of laughter. It is truly a journey that I can't believe I almost missed. Why is that? Well, simply put, A Realm Reborn's kinda mediocre. It's not bad, but it's just lacking. And to side note for a moment, A Realm Reborn lacks, well, character moments. It is just focused mostly on the world of Eorzea, which is done very fine. It just doesn't supplement it with the main cast to bolster the main story. So when the time comes for them to be more meaningful and when sacrifices happen, it's kind of like, oh, okay. Like, straight up, I had forgotten that Papalimo and Yida were characters for the longest time because they had barely left an imprint on my memory. They were that pointless to the plot in its entirety. Which causes a problem where the story is just me waiting for the story to pick up, but it never does much. In fact, it was getting so bad for me, I was reaching the point of not wanting to play the game anymore. However, I felt I was being a bit unfair, so I decided to do some side quests in order to see more of the game. Since the game does have a habit of making more content locked away through story, which at least gives it somewhat more meaningful interaction because it's not just go to this dungeon, it's that you need to go to this dungeon in order to help someone. Which is useful, but it doesn't really help all that much, as even then it's kind of dull. They're not bad, but they aren't memorable. And after doing a few, I had just decided that after one more quest, I would be entirely done with Final Fantasy XIV. And since I was in Falion, or this place, I decided to do this one quest. And it looked interesting enough, as we go to a graveyard as we meet Nashu Makaraka. How the hell do you pronounce this name? I've never seen anyone ever actually say her name aloud, so it's hard to note. Anyway, she is at the grave of HILDBRAND, a great detective, until he died while trying to get to Dalamud. Okay, quick explanation because this is sort of required. Okay, Dalamud was one of the moons of this star, but was actually a space station made by the Alligans, an advanced race that disappeared suddenly. It was being pulled down by the Guardian, these guys who wanted to destroy Eorzea, the place we are on. To note, this happened all in 1.0, which I cannot stress that I have not played, I have only heard from others, so we're all clear? Okay. In any case, there was also prophecies that stated that in order to prevent it, 4 warriors of light will rise to prevent it. However, HILDBRAND began to believe it included him, which is actually a joke on the word warrior and gentleman in Japan, because they sound similar. it just makes sense in the original. And he's an idiot, so there's that. And after preparing himself, he somehow blows himself up. No, seriously, blows himself up to give him enough force to launch at Dalamud, since it was close enough at this point. However, no one knows exactly what happened to him other than after a few years, he fell back down. Dead. Yeah, and this is his grave. Nashu was lamenting the entire event as she has having a hard time doing this all by herself after taking on the legacy of HILDBRAND. So since she's in need, she begins to ask you for some help, and you oblige, as this case is a bit odd as there are some weird zombies. Weird is also a fate too. I don't get why it's also a fate. After defeating them, we try to find where they're all located. However, they begin to surround us, as suddenly, HILDBRAND, now called Zombiebrand, tells all the other zombies to back away as that's rude. Now, you're probably wondering to yourself, wait, how is he alive? Well, you see, the Alligans didn't just make Dalamud as a space station, it was also made to seal up Bahamut, a primal which I'm not going to get into, just note, it's a big-ass monster that's just, you don't mess with. Basically, all they were trying to do was keep him there so no one else can summon him elsewhere. So one of the Allagan devices picked up HILDBRAND. However, without clear descriptions of what to do with him, they basically put him into stasis. Then what happened in Dalamud happened and, well, basically all the parts flew away, and it just took now to land. However, he was still in stasis, so by the time anyone else saw him, he looked dead. And by the time he came up, he basically had amnesia, and the zombies around him, God, that's a sentence I just said, just assumed that he was just another zombie and took him along with them. And over time began leading them and basically making him more gentlemanly. And since, as I mentioned before, he lost all of his memories, so he just basically went along with it. Nashu then gets a brilliant idea of how to reclaim his memory. You might be thinking to yourself, like, oh, maybe just go to some places that were, like, really cool places in 1.0 and maybe recollect on some memories of cases there. No. She decides by blowing him up. Yeah, and this is where I began to say, wait, what? And where, ironically, this was the moment that made me love Final Fantasy XIV. Okay, I know this was a very long intro, and it was just me explaining the history and backstory of HILDBRAND. Like, I get that. I just wanted you to have that context of, like, where I was in terms of both a narrative and just as me as a player in this sense. Though, to note, the Allagan stuff that I just referenced about how he survived isn't directly stated. It's mentioned in the Eorzea Encyclopedia, so there's that. With all of that out of the way, let's begin the actual reasons, like, or at least more the reasons why I love HILDBRAND so dang much. Because I genuinely believe he's one of the greatest characters in Final Fantasy XIV. Let's begin by talking about his journey and what makes it so special. What makes it so special in my mind is just how different it is on a fundamental level with how it tells its story. A lot of the side stories of Final Fantasy XIV are basic. They are more form and function with not a lot to them and like anything to them beyond, hey, can you do this thing for me? Granted, I argue that's a simplification, but I would argue that a lot of people would not disagree with this base assumption. So, to be clear, let's actually make sure you all understand when I say side quest. When I say side quest, I mean it has no main plot relevance. I mean, it can, but it cannot be directly tied to it. Like, class jobs are mandatory in my mind, because if you want certain abilities, you must do them. All raid quests and all normal raids count as well because they are part of major content. Though side trials and side dungeons are more than okay. And that's not even to say that some of the side quests were bad. Some of them were really good and memorable. Like the one that kind of deals with the main story of it, about the dead fiancé person, which I cannot remember the name. They're basically tied to the deep dungeons. which brings up that storyline, which I thought was well done and really captures the feel of this world and allows for the main narrative to expand more on just things that are just sort of referenced but actually brings them into main attention. I even heard there were like some good like normal yellow quests, which are like, wow, really? Like the post-Moogle quest line, which is really interesting. I'm not sure about it because I still haven't done it, but it's interesting to hear about it. I'm sorry for getting off topic. Like, I made a whole Reddit post about this asking about their favorite side quests, which I'll link below if I remember this time, god dang it. But in any case, my point is, a lot of the quests just felt too similar to one another, thus they kind of just blended into one another. I mean, Nashi's questline was kind of getting similar as well until all the wackiness started to become more noticeable. I mean, the moment Nashi pulled out those bombs, it basically shocked me to just say, whoa, I gotta pay attention to this, because it's so different. There's a lot of comedy to it. And basically, Hildy's reaction to it, it's just so different from anything we've ever seen in the game, that it just made me want to pay attention to more of it. And that leads up to my main point. It's a lot more expressive. It's a lot more willing to even break facial models just to give Hildy some really weird expression. And it helps so much with how many side quests are very, well, simplistic, which is fine in and of itself, but when it's all the time, it just becomes something nice to note that this questline doesn't do. Plus, it also helps with the comedy aspect of this questline, which requires good reaction, or else it feels fake, and a good example of this is early Power Rangers / Saban Tokusta, where basically the comedy just bails a lot for me because it tries so hard not to be serious that it becomes this sort of mess where you're just like, ugh. Because the jokes are not well formed and not given the proper reaction. This gives them so many proper reactions that when something funny begins to happening, it feels right. It gives you that context to feel like, that laugh. And speaking of comedy, yeah, this entire quest line, because yeah, there's more than one quest, is a very comical one, with a lot of it being slapstick, which I know not everyone's cup of tea, but hey, I again have to point out, it's well handled, and in my opinion, it's good enough to get a few chuckles out. But what makes it so funny to me outright is just how insane it is, and it just rolls with it. I actually want to target a criticism this questline gets at times, and like, I think it's a stupid criticism it gets because it just misunderstands Final Fantasy XIV on a fundamental level. Basically, a lot of people complain about how serious the main plot of FF14 is, and how this questline kind of just feels like, what the fuck is this doing here? I argue that it actually complements it. Like another series that I love, Yakuza, the crazy side stuff makes it feel more real to me than anything else. Because let me tell ya, and I say this with no hyperbole, and I say this because it's the only way you can understand it, there are people out there who genuinely believe Jews are from space. Like, legitimately believe that nonsense. What the heck makes you think our world, or any world for that matter, is going to be any more serious and less silly? There are so many things that happen that are so flat out weird, it baffles me to this day that people say this cannot be this stupid. Because trust me, there's a lot of stupid around us. Heck, the main story is a bit weird with some of its jokes as well. Like, go watch Final Fantasy XIV without context. Like, it's funny even with the context, and I mean, like, you cannot tell me the most serious story of Final Fantasy XIV, Endwalker, is all the time serious when it has a character called Puddingway whose goal is to understand pudding. Yes, seriously, just don't get mad at the story for being weird. Get annoyed at it when it breaks canon. Which is very ironic because this questline doesn't actually break canon at all. In fact, it keeps itself into canon and kind of bleeds into canon. In fact, there's a lot of lore references here, and a lot of it adds to the world in and of itself. For example, HILDBRAND has a dad. Like, yeah, no duh, but not just anyone. He is one of the top members of the ruling class of Fallian. Yeah, and he also runs the Golden Saucer, and later on comes into the main plot to help the Sultana of Fall do stuff to help the people. Not only that, certain side characters come back, like this guy can reappear in a minor questline. There is importance to it, and it feels like not only are you seeing just a weird version of what we always know, we're also just seeing something that's over there that we're just not seeing at the moment. But let's be honest here. Being important doesn't make you good. You gotta be one charming son of a bitch in order to make yourself memorable. And let me tell ya, he's memorable. Let's actually dive into Hildy's character truly. The first thing you really need to know about HILDBRAND is that he's an idiot. Not just an idiot. He is a true blue, true to the 12 idiot. He is someone who can look at the very obvious and somehow come to the most bizarre conclusion ever and somehow prove himself right or even more wrong. To note, when he's right, it's more times than not, he's just so wrong that it loops back around to somehow being right. Because that's how weird it gets sometimes. However, as a detective, he will never be deterred, even if he makes a mistake here and there, and everywhere else. He will always try to do his best to succeed so everyone can be happy. Because even when he's an egotistical idiot, who will blatantly state what he wants to do to benefit himself, he will never shrink the responsibility he has for others to help them, even if they are unworthy of such kindness. Kindness is just a word I want to just tie to him very directly, because he really is kind to a fault, willing to help anyone who genuinely asks for help. Because to him, he wants to live up to being a gentleman, which to him just infers that he needs to be kind, which he already is to a fault. And it's probably why he became an inspector to begin with. Which, to side note, we have no idea why he became an inspector. I would love to learn it in maybe Dawn Trail when that comes out, but another time. My point is, his kindness is his biggest strength, as it makes everyone around him go along with his sanity, help him solve cases, and most importantly, help him when he's in dire straits, like when he's poisoned and you need to gather ingredients in order to save him. By his bonds made throughout that entire journey, you get them to help you in order to help him because they were helped by him, which ended up saving the day. Or when he has to talk sense into his mammoth son, even if that means weathering some really powerful attacks that could straight up kill him, or facing execution to help his friend from doing seppuku for letting a criminal get away that wasn't really that bad of a criminal, or even a criminal in the traditional sense. I mean, he's willing to do a lot for others, even if that takes him to the moon and back. Though that time was actually an accident because he was abducted by aliens. Yeah, aliens are a thing in this universe, just don't worry about it. I'm just saying he will do whatever it takes to help someone, because to him, and he will not and cannot do otherwise. And throughout his journey, he has helped so many people that to tell any one of them is a spoiler, which I'm actively trying to mitigate since I actually want you to experience it yourself. I will tell you one story that definitely changed someone's life for the better. That being Nashu. I sadly couldn't find it where it's mentioned in-game because I know it's mentioned in-game, but I couldn't find it. I'm not sure why. But I know for a fact it's in-game. In any case, let's explain it. Nashu's life was pretty hard. Her mother died really young after being killed by a monster. So Nashu had to take care of her sister, which, to side note, is actually part of another minor event, which happens and it's never directly mentioned, but is sort of directly mentioned because of the name Makaraka. So again, that's interesting. I'm kind of more confused on why it's not more used, but that's just me. So for a while, she was a barmaid. A bit off, but still fine. Everything was going okay-ish for a while, until she was accused of stealing money from the place. And no one came to her defense. That is until he came in suddenly, and caught the actual thief, thus saving her. Nashu then began to follow him because this is someone who basically saved her life, and she began basically becoming his #1 fan. And does actually help the Inspector in a lot of small ways throughout the entire series. Unintentional or otherwise. But my point is, she really does care about the Inspector, and the Inspector cares about her back as well. Not in a romantic sense, but more in a friendship way. I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter to me. I would prefer the friendship, but I'm getting off topic. Because Hildy will go out of his way to help her. Like for that one time when Nashu got kidnapped. Hildy went out on his own with his father, who's actually the badass of the two. Even if he didn't do much, he went directly to the main villain and just said, hey, give us back Nashu. Which is very unusual for Hildy, but I find it as something he would do anyway. I could honestly keep going, but I won't. He's just a good person with a weird charm to him that just rubs off on everyone he meets. And through this entire charm of him, basically, he wants to do good. And I honestly cannot help but feel that's charming, because doesn't everyone want to do good for the world? But now, I want to talk about an aspect of the storyline that I think a lot of people don't really think about. And really, it's an interesting aspect. Essentially, I like to talk about how HILDBRAND's side quest actually represents sort of the MSQ in a lot of ways. In a thematical sense. Because yeah, when you actually think about it, all of his quests during each of the expansions actually fits thematically well with each one. Well, except maybe A Realm Reborn, because it has a lot of themes and ideas going for there. But otherwise, I think you can make an argument for it. Again, be aware of massive spoilers. One of the themes of A Realm Reborn is about unity and how even simple good deeds can lead to a better world. For example, the main character, Yu, starts off with doing just simple tasks, basic kindness here and there, and overall, and over time, soon combine into the Crystal Braves, people who want to help Eorzea. Well, the good ones, but that's another time. Your good deeds extend further than you could have ever imagined. And when the time comes where you're in trouble, others come in to help you because you helped them. And it just comes together into this idea of, we need to stay together. We need to help each other. Hildy's entire journey is about doing this thing. Helping others to make the world a better place. One of the characters straight up states that his altruism is very rare. To it note, the calamity after Bahamut caused a lot of issues. But he states that one not need search hard to find it. And that does really affect people around him, like Humphrey, this guy who failed to protect this heirloom of this guy's family. But after Hildy returns it and gives it back to this person, it basically drives Humphrey to become this better person and joins the Sultan's Sworn just to try to become a better person and actually try to help other people. And this happens throughout the entire storyline, where he helps other people with minor things. But these things help him later on, when at the end he's poisoned, and through all their collective kindness, they give back that kindness in spades in order to help him save the day. Because when we are alone, we are weak. But together, even if not directly connected, we are strong. Heavensward's themes are a lot more direct. It's mostly about loss and moving on from that loss. Throughout the story of Heavensward and the Dragonsong War, we basically deal with the effects of, well, the Dragonsong War, and how it has hurt everyone, and how they need to begin healing by letting the past be the past and going for a brighter future. For this one, Hildy's journey, or explosion, leads him to find Gigi, or Vivi, as he grows fond of him and actually pretty much adopts, because why not? However, Gigi is tormented by the loss of his grandpa, who he really wants back. And through the manipulation of these old knights of Ishgard, who want to reclaim their old glory and youth, to try to restart the war after peace has been achieved, just to truly reclaim any sense of glory. However, he will never get him back and must accept that it happened, and we must move forward to make it worthwhile, to make the lives we've lived and the bonds we made with them more meaningful. Hold on to them and pass on those feelings to the next. What's the point of living in the past and trying to live old glory when they tie us down and prevent us from doing the things that exist in the now? Whether that's starting a family or even the courage to say I love you to someone. The past is the past, but as long as we learn from it and keep going, we'll find something new, and we'll find more bonds to find there. Stormblood is a bit weird, and I need to talk about this here and now. One of the bigger problems with Stormblood is how thematically it has a lot of cool ideas, it just doesn't execute them properly at times. Stormblood's theme is about justice and how we achieve it for the sake of others. This one's a bit odd as it's a minor theme, but it's more important for the patch stuff. The Doma section was really about the nature of not getting involved and how it creates injustice to fester and hurt everyone there. The story of Yosuru is a big example of this. A person who became a monster after many years of injustice, that after being shown a bit of kindness was enough to fundamentally hurt her, basically collapsing in that guilt because that kindness was something she never got. I would keep going about this and how it fits well, but I'll leave that to one of my friends. Kugane is actually a big example of this, because it's full of everyone just trying to profit from each other and hurting each one, because why not? Heck, Hildy's quest begins with literal slavery and someone trying to eat a quern because that's somehow legal? Like, what? Yeah, it's plot points like this sometimes where I just remember that, yeah, FF14 is a bit dark. My point is, it's just to show off how corrupt this place is and that trying to fix it would take a fundamental breakdown of how it is functioning. Heck, one of the samurai quests deals with Kugane in a lot of sense, because at one point, one of the samurais left there trying to, start a revolution and try to fix the place, but it failed, and basically it almost killed his entire family, not because they were involved, but because they were related to him. Yeah, yet the game wants us to side with Kugane on this, but I'm getting off topic. Like, I plan on one day talking about the story of all the expansions in Final Fantasy XIV. Just note, when I get to 14 Stormblood, we're gonna have to talk a lot about that. In any case, Hildy meets Shigure, who's trying to make his own claim to the world by joining the Shinshigumi-like group. For him, it's mostly to try to gain money and gain fame. But after some time with Hildy, he generally wants to begin doing good for the world. However, he quickly realizes that not only is the world not so simple, he also learns that there are people in charge who want to hurt the system and hurt everyone around you, who will abuse it, and ask, how can we achieve true justice when those in charge bar us from it? How do we achieve a justice for our own sense? Mind you, the game doesn't really truly ever try to answer this because it tries to be lighthearted, but I feel as though it's interesting that it left that question very unanswered. This is also where I need to talk about something that I didn't mention, and that earlier on I'd mentioned something about a canon break. It happens here due to Prism, which is this thing that allows someone to mind control someone completely and utterly, but it doesn't exist anywhere else. Honestly, if they had just said that Chupacabra, yeah, I'm gonna call him that forever after Nashu called him that, and I was like, god damn it, that's too funny. I'm calling him that now forever. Anyway, if he was like the only one who could make it, I would be more cool with it, and maybe require rare resources that he only has access to. That would be all cool. Shadowbringer didn't actually get one because of, well, two main reasons. One that's actually very reasonable, and I entirely understand why. The other one I'm a little more meh on because, really? Okay, the reason why it didn't happen was because the former was because of, well, the pandemic, and I'm sorry for bringing that up because fuck me, ain't that fun to mention, was in full swing, and that messed up a lot of stuff, so they weren't able to implement him properly. The other reason does really confuse me, as I don't get it. Basically, they didn't want him to get stale, and they pretty much didn't have any idea what they could do with him here. Seriously? Look, getting stale is something I don't think Hildebrand can do. I mean, like, if you're a fan of Case Closed, which has gone on for a long-ass time, I feel as though there's always something to be said about something being stale is more of the mindset, but the material in and of itself can be good. And I mean, like, he rarely comes out anyway, so he's just at least a biannually thing because of how the expansions work. My point is, he doesn't come out enough to be that stale. But the part that does annoy me is more because they couldn't figure out a way to use him here. Like, what? I mean, like, how? This idea and area has so much potential. In a world that has come back from the brink of total collapse, how would they react to the utter insanity of Hildy? I mean, like, heck, here's a real plot line you can do if you ever think about going back for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a thing, but hey, maybe fan writers, take it. I don't care as long as you link me to it. Anyway, basically, in this storyline, there was the Warrior of Light basically calling up for other Warriors of Light to do good for the world. Well, what about a Gentleman of Light? Yeah, a story about Hildy training the next Gentleman Inspector for this world. Seriously, it would be a great chance to throw both Hildy and Nashu out of their element in a different world to explore. Heck, maybe have that kid we met in Shadowbringers be involved and have them regaining some color in his sad life. Though I say all that, he was ironically in Shadowbringers as well. Yeah, Hildy got trapped here, while in the rift with Greg. What? Who's Gilgamesh? That's Greg. Oh, okay, serious talk here. One of the minor cool aspects of Final Fantasy XIV in general is how it will use older Final Fantasy characters, but in fun, different ways. Like, for example, Ultros and Typhoon are in this game. Ashura and Professor Lagua are in this game as well. It's just really neat. Okay, as much as I talked about Shadowbringer, what is the actual theme of Shadowbringer? And, by extension, Endwalker. For me, at least, it's about finding hope in a terrible situation and finding the meaning of it all. In a world as dark as ours, what's the point of living? Honestly, this has been an underlying theme of the entire series since the beginning, but it is in full force here. With the literal death of the universe happening, or had happened, or god damn it, it's like, it goes to the coldest reaches, to our mortal enemy, to the vast skies above. And we see all the amazing stuff out there. All the deep questions of life in its place. It's an expansion that I genuinely love. Because it talks about these things and actually does not give a conclusive answer. It asks a lot of things. But the answers it gives are, that's up to you to decide. Hildy's journey has also been like that for a lot of time too. As is so much of this journey as well. My point is, Hildebrand kind of exemplifies that theme to the very max. He is a man who has had his ups and downs, with some of those downs being downright heartbreaking. But he keeps moving forward, never stopping, searching on for the next case to solve and begin helping others again. Because to him, it makes life worth living. To see the next new person, the next different culture around him, the fun misadventures waiting to happen, because to him, he will find and just solve all the cases around him. Because he is a hero. Well, more of a gentleman of light. And honestly, I can't help but just say that Hildebrand made me genuinely love this game so much because of that spirit within him. That spirit of just joy of life. It is just insanity of it. And honestly, when Dawn Trail happens and we experience that, I can't wait to see the next journey of Hildebrand. I know this wasn't my usual wheelhouse, and I apologize if this is not a good video. I understand that, but for me, I just wanted to make this because I really love this journey. And I hope you do too. I hope you all have a wonderful day,